The Leica SL2 is a fantastic camera, and the lineup of Leica SL lenses is growing steadily and provides a lot of good options. And there are two lenses in that SL lens universe which I like in particular, and that's the two APO-SUMMICRON lenses, 35 and 50mm, widest open aperture f2.0 and aspherical optics. So in February this year I wanted to travel and test out the two APO-SUMMICRON lenses. So I went to Zurich airport, and this was just before the lockdown triggered by the coronavirus pandemic situation. And I took a plane to a Spanish island in the Mediterranean Sea. It's called Majorca. And Majorca has a reputation in Germany for being just a party island. People go there, get drunk, celebrating clubs the whole night. But some photographers I know very well gave me that tip and said, if you go there in February, it's a calm, peaceful, silent island, and you will find beautiful spots to take terrific photos. So I decided to be minimalistic, focusing on the two APO-SUMMICRON lenses only, mounted on the Leica SL2, and you see here from the balcony in the hotel my equipment. This is not a lot of equipment for my relations here. I typically take several cameras with me, several lenses and lots of things. It was also not about doing a shooting for clients and selling those pictures. It was pure holiday. I had time to fully focus on my experience with the two APO-SUMMICRON lenses, and I should say right before we start the video, I really enjoyed that experience. So share with me my experience and my impressions. Let's get started with the video. Arriving at the hotel and looking around, it was a beautiful place and clearly suitable for a first shooting. I liked it a lot what I saw. February, already good weather on Majorca Island. This hotel here is outside of Palma de Majorca, which is kind of the capital city of the island. Beautiful garden around, very nice impressions. So I got ready for a first shooting, and the first shooting was supposed to be a model shooting with the APO-SUMMICRON 50mm and testing it out. So clearly I was very happy with my shooting results. The APO-SUMMICRON 50mm fully delivered, and you can shoot that lens most of the time wide open at f2.0, and there is absolutely no problem. Pictures are pinpoint sharp, you get beautiful bokeh, and if you shoot it at f5.6, that's my experience, this is kind of the sweet spot on the aperture of the lens. You get sharpness corner to corner in one of the best ways I've ever seen it on a lens. Since I had now explored the hotel as a shooting location, my next shooting location was supposed to be downtown in Palma de Mallorca, and there's a beautiful big cathedral, and I wanted to plan it carefully to find the best shooting location to set this cathedral in scene, and also to get the best lighting conditions, so the sun should be coming from a side where I get the best light and do not have too many shadows, and in this way get a perfect shot of that big cathedral. Zooming out again of that Google Maps representation, I decided to place myself and the camera right here at the bottom and shoot along the axis you see here towards the cathedral, with the sun coming from the left hand side being over the ocean, and in this way getting perfect light on that part of the cathedral I wanted to set in scene. So on my way to the photo location I found that guy here, and I like these kind of pictures, a single person walking through a scene, and again the Leica SL2 with those lenses was pinpoint sharp. So here's my photo location I was showing before on the map. You see the water, and on the right hand side of the water that axis I wanted to use to find orientation for my shooting here. Looking around, the sun is where I planned it should be, just over the ocean. And you see here how important planning is if it comes to light, because in this way the sun was shining brightly at the side of the cathedral and avoiding any difficult light conditions like shadows, so all to my liking, and I can start my shooting here. So here's the first result, and following that waterfront in the middle vertically into the image gives a natural guidance to the observer. So this was shot with the 50mm APO-SUMMICRON. ISO was set at 100, f16 and 1/60th of a second. So quite nice, and again pinpoint sharp. Look at those little people sitting on the banks and enjoying the sunlight straight away into their face. So all in a good result, but I wanted to do something different, and that will be the next shot I'm going to show. And the underlying idea is simple. I wanted to get the water calm. By the way, here I marked in red again the axis leading the eye of the observer. So here now I used the neutral density filter and I mounted it on the APO-SUMMICRON. ISO was set at 400. The aperture I opened a little more to f11 and exposure time 240 seconds. And that created that special, very nice atmosphere with a very peaceful water, very calm, very, let's call it silent, and is of course a totally different image impression than what the former shot was delivering here. And of course I had to come back to that location at night. That's something I'm doing very often, doing a shooting at daylight and then coming back at night to get the same scene but with a different atmosphere, because a night shooting always is very different to what you have when you look at a daylight picture. And here's the result. I think there is a danger that you see some color banding on YouTube due to video compression, but on my MacBook it's a crystal clear image. ISO 50, f16, 75 seconds, again a pinpoint sharp image and a totally different atmosphere, so the third atmosphere we have now on that scene, shooting at night. The APO-SUMMICRON 50mm really delivers from all angles, and there is absolutely nothing to complain about that lens. I also link in the info box below the video a video on my channel on autofocus tracking with that lens mounted on the Leica SL2. The shooting was on the same Spanish island here, and you're invited to look this up and get your own impressions. Now I'm going to share a few images from just walking through the city, again with the 50mm and playing with light, shadow and bokeh. There is one other perspective I wanted to try out, and in a previous shooting of the cathedral, I basically was catching the cathedral more from a vertical perspective. Now I wanted to have a shot on the front side of the cathedral, and I wanted to use that little walkway into the ocean here in the way you see it here on the map. So on the upper right hand side you see the cathedral, then there's this walkway, and walking along that way up to this restaurant basically in the middle, I wanted to choose my location and shoot along the waterfront again with a vertical axis, but this time at the side front of the cathedral. So the result from that shooting, it was at the darker time of the blue hour, but still some rest or remaining light here. I want to show in Lightroom because that gives me the option to zoom a little bit in and explain a little bit what's going on here. So this is the waterfront axis I wanted to use as an axis leading the eye of the observer into the image. Here we see the cathedral, here we see some parts of the waterfront, and there are lots of details in that image. If you look into the waterfront here, for instance, you see this empty water bottle. If you look at the traffic signs here, all very nice, all very sharp, and in general a very good image. The dynamic range of the Leica SL2 is absolutely fantastic, 14 or 15 stops, and the actual scene was darker, but via post-processing you can actually activate a lot of light and information captured in the raw image. You see this is the digital negative here. The exposure time was 90 seconds. I stopped down to f20 and used the lowest ISO value available on the Leica SL2, f50. And if we look into the details of the image, very, very nice. And I think in general a good atmosphere. You can print this very large. And I said at the beginning of the video, I'm here on holidays, but this is an image you could easily sell to a client if it is a large print. In particular because there are many rich people actually having their second homes on this Spanish island here, and they might appreciate an image like this. So in general good, details are good, dynamic range is good. I'm happy with that result. On the way home I found another perspective going back in the direction of the cathedral. Again, a nice perspective and shows me the cathedral more from the front side. So again, good dynamic range, good sharpness, and all in an interesting picture. And the last one I want to show here is light trails on one of the big streets around the old part of Palma de Majorca. And I was just walking by and thought this is a good moment to actually mount the camera again on the tripod and just take the shot. In the second part of the video, let's focus more on the APO-SUMMICRON 35mm f2.0. It's in the same way a fantastic lens. That's clearly my conclusion from shooting at this Spanish island. And I'm going to use that now mainly for landscape, and also I want to quickly show again how I planned my shooting. So let's get started with the 35mm focal length now. So my next shooting location was a lighthouse on the island here, and the hotel was in Palma, as I said, photo location in the north of the island, surrounded by cliffs and on the coastline, very rough and wild territory, and probably a very interesting drive with a rental car through all of the island here. And when you actually go on that journey, you come through a lot of small villages on the island, so I show them quickly on the map here. And there are lots of opportunities to play with the 35mm APO-SUMMICRON, which I did, and I'm going to share in a moment a little slideshow, just giving a few impressions how that lens actually worked. And as I said, it's fantastic image quality. Those images are not very special, but just impressions of the island. And then we continue our tour to the lighthouse. Driving over the island was a fantastic experience. Small streets, lots of interesting landscape, and from time to time I actually had to pay attention to wild mountain goats because they were jumping around and crossing the street unexpectedly, which is nice. From time to time you also got a closer look at them, and they were sometimes in a mood to fight, so you better make sure you get your car out of range here. And we are getting close to the lighthouse now. Here you see a close-up shot of another couple of goats, and here we finally see our photo location inside. So that's the Cap de Formentor lighthouse, and it was a long drive coming from Palma. It took us more than 2 hours to get there, but we also spent some time on the way, as I said, in the smaller villages to take some photos and just collect some impressions. So we are getting now close to a very famous photo location, and please don't be shocked if I quickly interrupt my video here to trigger the Instagram point and shoot photographer alarm, because people come here with their cars, they park them on the street without being allowed to park their cars, they lean over the ceiling and they take the picture in the way I'm simulating here by zooming into the iPhone video of Cap de Formentor lighthouse, which is the most prominent view on social media networks, and that's not what I wanted for my shooting. So let's quickly continue for the last mile up to the lighthouse. Let's have a look around, but then let's follow some planning, which I'm again explaining on Google Maps, what shooting I wanted in order to get my unique own picture of Formentor lighthouse and not the usual social media stuff you can look up everywhere in the internet. So here's on Google Maps another famous photo location. It says photo point Cap Formentor. That's not what I wanted to use. But I went up a little higher with the car, and there was also a natural parking lot in the middle of the rocks where I could park the car and then climb a little bit up the hill to a very natural peak in the mountains. Getting to the highest zoom level on Google Maps, maybe you can see here these little rocks peeking up in the mountains, which I used to actually frame the picture of the lighthouse in the way I wanted to have it. Here's the result of that shooting, climbing up the rocks. It's the APO-SUMMICRON-SL 35mm. ISO was at the lowest level of the SL2, 50 and an aperture of f18 and 0.5 seconds, and I like the way this image is framing the lighthouse, and it has certain elements of symmetry in it. It's pinpoint sharp. I think again the APO-SUMMICRON lenses are delivering a fantastic job when it comes to clarity, contrast, sharpness, and in general optical performance. So I got the shot I wanted, and I'll conclude the video now with a few more shots taking in this rough territory on Majorca Island, and showing you a few more samples from both lenses, the APO-SUMMICRON 50 and 35mm. So this is the last image I'm showing in this video. Catching light with the SL2 and the APO-SUMMICRON lenses is just a wonderful experience. If you liked my video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching and peace out.